Now, it's a big debate, the conversations on Nigeria's current reality and our journey 32 years down the line following the famous June 12, 1993 general elections. They're caused by the former Jigawa State Governor, Sule Lamido, to immortalize the INEC chairman at the time, the late Professor Humphrey Nwosu, who was the one in charge of the conduct of the elections. Now, following the memoir and the book published by retired General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, where an acknowledgement was given as to the fact that the election was unduly annulled, these debates are on: is the late Chief M.K. Abiola supposed to be receiving posthumous presidential honors? Big debates this morning. But bringing it down to our current reality in Nigeria, the current renewed hope agenda under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has also been evaluated as to certain policy decisions that he has taken and how he has broadened the struggle for democracy owing to his days on the NADECO and now as president. Is his government giving that room for constructive criticism in line with certain protests built to hit the streets of Nigeria today? Our next guest on the program is a consultant, Communication and Strategy, Office of the Senate President of Nigeria. We're speaking to a very revered colleague in the business as well, Sir Kenny Okolugbo. Good morning to you, sir.
Sir Kenny Okolugbo.
Kenny.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you.
My first time here.
Yeah, but not the first.
Nice studio.
Yes, Mr. Okolugbo, please, could you come close and let me have that handshake again. Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
It's quite the time in the country, and
yes,
a lot of Nigerians, despite this being a journey and a struggle, the sacrifices owing to where we are democratically, it's been 26 years of unbroken civilian rule. The parliament is being looked at as one of the symbols that is entrenching our democracy.
Yes.
But debates is on, do we have actual representation? Do the elections that birth some of our representatives from the constituency level actually reflect the yearnings of the Nigerian people? So I think it's best to start with the issues of elections and how fair and free they've been as a symbol of our democracy, and hinged on the function of the parliament in that regard.
Well, yeah, that's a very beautiful question, because on a day like this, I mean, why do we have June 12? We have June 12 because basically it's been perceived to be the freest, not perceived now, it's been confirmed to have been the freest and fairest election we have ever had in the history of this country. And then again, narrowing it down to what you have said, if you notice, the parliament is the only body that is absent, even when we're in a military regime. You always have the judiciary and you always have the executive. So in a democracy, it is always the parliament that is a stabilizing factor. It is the parliament that it's the one that makes the laws, carries out the oversight functions, decides what to appropriate to this particular ministry, department, or agency of government. But you have said, how do these people get elected? You know, it's interesting because if you look at this present 10th National Assembly, you have the House of Rep and you have the Senate. And over a point of time now, you have it's been dominated by the APC. It started with the APC being the majority, and it is on the increase. And that's because a whole lot of people are moving party affiliations. And basically why those party affiliations are being moved is because they have seen the success of the renewed hope agenda. Some people tend to want to say it's a one-party state, but I don't believe it's going to be a one-party state. Why do I say this? Internal democracy will now matter a lot in the APC, because if you have this whole lot of, sometimes you call them, you know, beds of different feathers conglomerating together in one place, there'll be, you know, plurality of opinions would certainly occur. And so it goes to the election that we're going to look forward to, which is the 2027 election, because we cannot be looking at the one that has passed. It now behaves on the fact that if internal democracy is practiced properly, if people come out from a process where they are satisfied that, you know, these primaries were done, they were free and they were fair, they'll queue behind the candidates and to bring up the best candidates and not the ones that have been produced by godfathers, then by the time you go for the main election, it becomes easier for you to win your. Do we start from the House of Assembly, your House of Assembly elections, your federal constituency election, and your senatorial district elections? And that's the truth.
Now I believe largely it's the conversations on even the electoral umpire INEC as well.
Oh yes, because the electoral umpire. But if you notice, if the electoral umpire it's not as bad as it used to be when people try to always condemn INEC. That people are buying votes. That's a sign to tell you that INEC is doing their work.
That
means
the
it's
fact that votes do count.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say, because it becomes more difficult for you to rig. Because if you can rig, in those days, people just go to their houses in most cases and just write the election results, and INEC oppose those election results. But those steps that have been taken, like the voters card, the fact that you can now not just go and vote without going through accreditation, and the fact that people now have to also stay and purchase votes, shows that you cannot just go, the way it used to be. So the only thing you must do in repositioning INEC is to ensure that we eliminate the corruption of vote buying. If we can strengthen that system and eliminate the corruption of vote buying, our results will count a whole lot more in the future.
Now, talking about the functions and the idea of democracy, it ought to be one of the best forms of governance. My last guest on the program spoke about finding our own type of democracy and not copying from the Western world. In terms of the parliament, which you've spoken about and how it has evolved post-military era,
yes,
do you think that we can fine-tune this need for a referendum in the debates of if we're to readopt the 1963 Constitution or re-amend an amended 1999 Constitution? How does that work in your opinion?
I think if we're going to go to 1963 Constitution, it will become a bit more cumbersome, because then we're not going to have the executive. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to have more like a parliamentary system of government, where the prime minister, will emerge from the parliament. He will be the dominant party, and we modeled our democracy after the presidential election in America. I think what we need to do is to amend that constitution, because the constitution that was given to us was given to us by the military. Yes, over the years, people will say, "Oh, you will keep talking about amending constitution. Every parliament that has come will say they have made this amendment. They have made this amendment. After they go, we still cry for amendments. We need a holistic approach." But I don't think so. If you look at the tax bill, for example, that's just been passed by the Senate and also the House of Reps, you notice that there are obsolete laws of 1939, 1960. They were still being practiced. And you see, now we have a holistic approach. We have 4 commissions, and we have been able
development commissions.
No, not commissions. I'm talking about the tax.
The tax.
We have the ombudsman. That's the appeal tribunal. We have the tax board, which eliminates the present revenue, and so that whole streamlining and removing all those obsolete laws, that makes it impossible for you to pay double taxation. That makes it possible for the vulnerable ones to be protected, and also
exemption for low
and gives
income
exemption. You just took it off before low income earners, especially for those who are earning the minimum wage of 70,000 naira. Why do I say this now? If you've been able to take care of this tax bill issues that we have had since the colonial days, it shows that we can take care of these issues one after the other. It takes me to the development commissions I was talking about. Okay, before that we had NDDC. I was a commissioner in Delta State, and I happened to have been a commissioner, and I had under a development agency, we call it DESOPADEC, and I was representing the Ndokwa Nation. I know the impact we did make in my time because of the extra funds that were being given to us as a development commission. We're getting 50% of the 30%, of the 13% that was being derivation, and that 50%. That 13% was turned to 100%, while the center, which is the state government, takes 50%. We were given 50%. Now, why do I say this? Now, we had the NDDC under Obasanjo, and I must give kudos to this 10th Senate, and they were the drivers of the development commissions. Before they came aboard, we only had the Northeast Development Commission. Now you have the Northwest Development Commission, you have the North Central Development Commission, you have the Southwest Development Commission, you have the South-South Development Commission, and you have the Southeast, which is very important because, after the war, the Southeast have always cried for a development commission because they have felt that they have been shortchanged, which is in a whole lot of extent is true in terms of rebuilding, and now you have those commissions, which is an extra tonic to what the governors are doing. It will also keep the governors on their toes, because by the time you see these development commissions, which is the federal government baby, working, they've all been signed into law. And so you can imagine where we're coming from. One, we now have 6. 1 during the Buhari's regime and 5 under the Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. So these are things that you can do and that the legislature can do, which are different from what the executive. That is why we have the separation of powers. We have the executive, we have the legislature, we have the judiciary. And so these things are stories that have to be told to Nigerians, because a lot of people do not know the impact of what those commissions are. They will think it's another conduit pipe. They will just dismiss it. But by the time they start seeing the reality of the work that are being carried out by these commissions, it will dawn on them the necessity and the need of why these commissions were actually created.
Now, let's talk about it from the angle of certain conversations on restructuring as well.
Yes.
Because one of the proponents of the 1963 Constitution to be revisited are talking about restructuring and the need to give autonomy to the federating states. It also brings to mind our practice of federalism and how this relates to the current struggles of Nigerians. Because a lot of time we talk about the realities of the Nigerian people, and they say, hold the state governors accountable, hold the local government chairman accountable. But it's always another conversation that leads to the case of autonomy. Are they really functional? How do you see Nigeria evolving and consolidating on these conversations of restructuring and the federalism we're practicing?
I have always believed in restructuring as a student of politics. But you see, the restructuring in Nigeria has been difficult to attain because of the problem of autonomy. Now, how do you restructure when the local government chairman is answerable to the governor? The governor himself doesn't see himself as independent. He's answerable to the president. Now, restructuring should start from to a whole lot of people, control of your resources. Like in the Niger Delta, for example, a whole lot of us are not happy with the 13% we're getting. We believe if we get more than 13%, the development in the Niger Delta will be a whole lot more, because the bulk of the nation's wealth comes from there. And if you go to Borno, if you go to Zamfara, if you go to Katsina, they also have Zamfara, for example, they have a whole lot of oil mineral deposits. They have gold. You understand? Everybody has been blessed with one mineral deposit or the other that if you harness, you'll be able to pay tax at the center. And so that is where the issue of restructuring first starts from. Then you now talk of the autonomy. The autonomy that we're giving to the local governments have not been 100%, because the fact that you still have the state electoral commissions makes it impossible for the local government chairman to tell you that he's actually independent, when he knows that if he's going for re-election, his election is going to be dependent on the governor, who control his future. And
even in the disbursement of funds, there's a joint account still operational.
That is exactly what I'm saying. The joint account is being eliminated now. But
the
judgment that was given by the Supreme Court becomes illegal for you to operate a joint account. But even assuming we have considered, yes, I understand what they're trying to say, that some of them are still operating it. Let's even assume that the joint account does not even exist at all, and you're sending this money directly to the local governments. They dare not do some of those projects without also out of fear, without also clearing from the governor. Except the governor is different. You know, it has to depend on individuals. You understand? It's just like one program I had in one of your sister stations yesterday, and I was saying it's criminal for any state government not to be paying the minimum wage of 70,000 naira, because that has been passed into a law, and the law has to be obeyed, because that was a law passed from the National Assembly and was assented to by Mr. President. And you know, some people don't even also understand that the budget is a law. They look at it like one of those appropriations that they just come, they decide, and before it's signed into it's like a bill. But there are all laws that if you break, you are liable to be held responsible for it. So the autonomy becomes very difficult to establish. So if you don't establish autonomy and you cannot establish restructuring, and you know we have the exclusive legislative list, the oil mineral deposits are still under the exclusive legislative list. As long as you don't remove them from the exclusive legislative list, this issue of restructuring cannot actually become a reality, in my opinion. Look at electricity, for example. They removed it from the exclusive list. You can see some states are already taking the initiative in their power generation, because Nigeria is a very vast country, over 200 million. You must break these things down for it to be able to get to the people. That's why we have the tiers of government. We have the federal government, we have the state government, and we have the local government. Local government basically is supposed to bring the government nearer to the people.
Now, let's bring it back to the yearnings of the Nigerian people.
Yes.
Because we can talk about the government and the responsibility they owe the Nigerian people. But in terms of the yearnings of Nigerian people, it's almost as though 26 years down the line, we're still complaining of power. We're still complaining about good roads, particularly even the Niger Delta, the East-West Road continues to be a project that has been...
Yes.
I'm looking for the best of words. It looks as if it's been underprioritized. I think that's the best word that comes to mind.
Yes.
This yearnings of Nigerians 26 years down the line, do you think Nigerians have received the best part of this system of governance that we're practicing?
I mean, I'll be deceiving you if I tell you that we've received the best system, because the painful thing about it is that some people just come and they decide to say they want their own policy. But I see the president looking at abandoned projects, because one of the reasons people were condemning the Lagos the Lagos Calabar coastal road was because they said, oh, finish the east-west road first, finish these other ones that you've met on ground before you embark on such a huge, gigantic project. But listening to the works minister, I was quite impressed to see that some of these roads have not been abandoned. There's been challenges of budgetary provisions, mainly because of the paucity of funds, and that is why it is essential that in the 2026 budget, the East-West road has to be captured, and the development commissions too must also play their part. If the NDDC and the South-South Development Commission can combine together with the Ministry of Works, I believe that we can. I'm just giving that idea. I believe we can take a decisive decision on this East-West road that has been a problem in terms of completion, because that is one other very important gateway that connects the South-South to the other parts of the country, apart from the Lagos Calabar, which, if completed, will be a very huge. In fact, it will be one of the miracles of West Africa, where you can go from one coastal city to the other, like Lagos Calabar, that would naturally be 12 hours for 5 hours. Everybody knows that time is money. And again, one of the things that the government should also do is to block the leakages. That is where I also give this government a huge kudos. The EFCC has done a lot in blocking leakages, but we still need to do more. There is never a time when you can say it is yet uhuru. And so if these leakages are blocked and we're able to strictly adhere to contract processes, like what we have from the Bureau of Public Enterprise and all the others that have and carry out, that's why the National Assembly has also done a lot in carrying out the check and balances. But there have to be a tightening of this check and balances, so that these funds that are put in the budget are actually streamlined and put into exactly what they have been meant to be put into. Then this government would surely mark a difference, which we can see. I mean, the blind can even see that there's more than light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, talking about light, which was part of my earlier question, you've talked about the essence of these roads. The president has reiterated that industrialization cannot thrive without good road infrastructure.
Certainly.
But the challenge has been in terms of the availability of power, particularly electricity. It's been a challenge that has taken us a lot of years, despite the unbundling of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. The current government has also had to seek alternative off-grid sources, saying it will free up more megawatts for more Nigerians. But the power grid stability has also been a big challenge.
In fact, my boss was very clear on it. We trended when he made that statement on the floor of the Senate chambers. He said one of the things that would be the albatross of this government is the power sector. That if we do not get the power sector well, there's nothing that can make this government succeed. And that was because everybody was, spoke that day about the shortcomings of the Transmission Company of Nigeria and the DISCOs. We can't deny the fact that power has been one of the major problems that we have had. I think the Minister of Power would also have to up his ante, because this issue of band A, band B, band C, band D has not solved the problem of power. Now, it is said that we hit our peak of 6,000 megawatts. That has been confirmed. We've never hit 6,000 megawatts. But was it sustained? It was not sustained. Now, I know the desire of the president is to see us at least go beyond 6,000 megawatts. And so, since electricity has been unbundled, what I would have thought the minister would do would have been to interface with the state governments, especially those who have the capacity. Not every state government has the capacity. Those who have the capacity to also generate. Because you see, when you can generate from other sources, and like you rightly said in your own words, free up some megawatts, that megawatts that they were dependent on will now be freed up for other people to use. In my community in Dokwa Nation, there's a protest that is coming up on the 16th, which is just about 4 days from now. It's created a lot of discomfort, but they are saying light up the Ndokwa Nation, because the Ndokwa Nation has been in darkness. And that is where I come from. I come from Okwani local government. And a whole lot of people are sad about it, because in Ndokwa we have the Okpai gas plant. We produce 480 megawatts. You cannot believe it. And there's a second phase. But it's not stepped down. The only people that enjoy the light are the immediate people who they're getting the gas from. We have a huge gas deposit from that region, and the people feel completely shortchanged that you use our power, you feed it to others, and you're not feeding to us. So now it is now behaves on the missing top to judge with someone like my state governor and agree on how can we enhance the distribution of electricity that is coming from this huge gas deposit that we find in this area. That is why such strikes will call their attention, and that's why I say there's still a whole lot to be done in the power sector. We must just tell ourselves the basic truth. It's not enough to celebrate 6,000 megawatts. We should sustain the 6,000 megawatts and beyond that.
Now, one of the other core functions of government of the people is provision of security for persons and property. Insecurity has lived with us for the best part of the last 2 decades, and Boko Haram resurgence is another conversation that has been deliberated on the floor of the Senate and, by extension, the House of Assembly in its totality. It's the challenge with combating insecurity. It's festered in different forms. It's now even beyond the northeast, northwest. It has found a stay in the north central. Plateau and Benue have been the most recent states that have accounted for over 350 deaths in the last 6 weeks. I don't know, one of the solutions you might prefer that should be explored by security architecture. Many are calling for the use of foreign mercenaries. What do we do to get this right?
Yeah, that's one of the issues that we cannot deny. There has been a recurring decimal, and sometimes you see a lot of politics in it, but it's sad because what has happened in Benue and Plateau, especially Benue, that is our food basket. That's one of the things that also bothered my boss, the Senate president. And so what did he think? I sat with him, I was with him that day, and one or two other senators, I would not have to mention their name, they were thinking out of the box, as to tell you how worried he was. And he felt that, look, we cannot continue summoning the security chiefs all the time when these issues happen. We go behind closed doors and we come out and we still see these issues reoccurring. So what did he do? A Senate motion was moved and was adopted by Senator Jimo Ibrahim, and now there's a security summit coming up. The security summit is not going to be a jamboree. The security summit that is coming up is going to look into all the critical areas. What is wrong with our security architecture? Where did we get it wrong? And how can we nip it into the bud? It's going to be a serious summit that will take far-reaching decisions that will be different from other decisions that are taken. It's because of this Democracy Day and the fact that the National Assembly had to go on the recess. But I'm 100% sure by the time they come on the 17th, the committee has already been set up for the Security Summit. I know by the time they resume on the 17th, we'll have a definite day, which would not be any time, which will be very close.
Now, one of the summits that also held that we saw strong positions from the Senate President as well was the National Police Summit. It's also part of the views of former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan on the issue of state police. Do you think it will be factored into part of the deliberations at the National Security Summit?
Of course. That's
what you for or against state police?
I am for state police. Why do I say that? You can never know your area as much as the person that lives there. It's the person that lives there that knows his area. Yes, you can say, oh, the governors will abuse it. They will take their opponents into incarceration. How long can we continue to be afraid of the governor's abuse and we continue with this, situation we have found ourselves? We have seen that in certain situations where we have had local vigilante, there's been peace established in those areas. There are areas now, like even in my states, that are almost being overrun by Fulani herdsmen. It is that bad. But people that know the local terrain, when they combine with other forces, it becomes easier for you because you now get local intelligence. Intelligence gathering is very important. That is one of the things that will be discussed at the Security Summit. That is why the issue of the state policing will definitely come. Because if you now have the state police and you have a centralized police overseeing the state police, you are decentralizing power. You're making it easier for security situations to be nipped in the bud. Don't forget what the Director General of DSS said when these incarcerated killings had continued in the Plateau and the Benue. He said there was a community that, maybe you call it a pilot program, that had arms. And they were able to deal with the marauders, and the marauders never came again. And so a lot of people are even suggesting that why not at least certain communities you arm them with license. And when the marauders know that they're going to invade, you charge the leaders. You charge. Yes, you say people could say it could lead to anarchy.
Senator Ned Woko raised on,
exactly.
Based on the proliferations of small.
I'm happy you remember the Senator Ned Woko raised it. And you see, there's the first line of defense. It's not like you defending your home. Nobody will defend your home like you.
But you know, some of his colleagues argue
it can be abused. I agree where his colleagues are coming from. It could be abused, but what he was saying is that look, we could track it, we could have it licensed, we could know who you've given it to, and you now know that this person cannot use it for any other ulterior motive, but strictly as a defensive mechanism, because you cannot have the DSS everywhere. We don't have the manpower to even have the police everywhere. It's the absolute truth. So you must have local intelligence, and this would help to nip this banditry, Boko Haram, ISWAP, or whatever you might call it, in the bud, because this is one issue that has, distracted the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I believe that the Security Summit will take charge of most of these areas. That is the Security Summit that is going to be held by the Senate.
Well, I wish we had more time on our hands to delve into the conversations, but before you go, I'd just like more or less a goodwill to Nigerians. Many talk about the need for us to gauge how we approach Democracy Day. Some say it's not to be celebrated. Some say it's a day of sober reflection. I don't know, for you, off the back of June 12, how do you approach the Democracy Day commemoration with a message to Nigeria?
I just wish that at this time we'll always remember Abiola, MKO Abiola. For those of us who were in the university then, we know what he meant and we know what he represented. He was a beneficiary of the free and freest election ever held in this country. He paid the supreme sacrifice. I think it's a time to always celebrate his values. In celebrating his values, we must not lose the fact that values should also, come down to, trickle down to the end, for people to understand that what he stood for was, he wanted a free Nigeria. He wanted Nigeria where we can have the plurality of funds. He wanted a Nigeria where we could have security, where we could have food, where we could have good roads, where we could have electricity. And so I think it's a day of not only celebrating his values, we must also celebrate the future of Nigeria, and not to fail to take a deep reflection of where we are coming from and how we can nip in the bud all these issues that we have had that have stopped us from becoming the giant of Africa that we desire to become.
Well, Sir Kenny Okolugbo, thank you very much.
This is a great time having you.
It's always a pleasure.